Yeah, for sure. And I think like it still comes back to people are suffering, they're hurt. I think in many contexts, it has absolutely nothing to do with government and the outside world. I think this is family stuff. This is intergenerational stuff. This is
Yeah.
being human stuff. But that's really hard to sit with. And I know this because I've been trying to do it for several years. Like it's like you have to bring your attention back to it truly moment to moment. This isn't like a once a day thing where you're like, yes, my chest is kind of gripped because I feel anxious. Okay, moving on. No, it's like a day to day, moment to moment thing. And I think when you're not in touch with that, there's a lot more opportunity for that unconscious to run the show and to look for blame, to look for someone to be responsible for why I'm upset and and this is so libertarian to me, like the concept of taking responsibility for your feelings, like it's nobody else's job.
Yeah.
And when you're lashing out at other people, look, maybe there's even merit to what you're saying. Like clearly there's merit to me, being upset about certain things the government does. And that's different because that's a conversation about violence and morals versus, just interpersonal psychology and blaming people. But it's a lot easier to be angry and to blame someone else than to sit with very deeply rooted feelings and discomfort that might be causing your suffering a lot more than that random feminist or that random racist or whatever, the random misogynist. Okay, no, I don't really want to associate with them, but am I their victim? No, I'm not their victim. They haven't done anything to me. I have a problem with it's the identification of self with victimhood and that becoming a feature of someone's personality.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 245. And I have somebody I've been wanting to get on here for a long time. Carey Wedler. She produces a lot of content on her own. She's also with an organization called the Anti-Media. Is that your organization, or is that you and somebody else?
It will forever be my organization, but we have been out of commission since 2018 when we were banned. But I'll always be with the Anti-Media, so you're not wrong.
Yes, this was the day of what's sometimes now known as the Great Facebook Purge back in 2018, which hit a lot of people. Of course, you got famous for your burning your Obama shirt video, which is absolutely hilarious. Yeah, we appreciate that. So how are you, Carey?
I'm doing great. I actually, speaking of losing the Anti-Media quite a while ago, I just launched a Substack last month. I'm having a lot of fun with that, coming back to writing. I'm still doing my videos, so slightly different tone than my articles. I'm very sassy in my videos. My articles, I'm trying to be a little more amenable to all parties who might be reading. The videos, I don't care.
Carey gave a great talk about women in the liberty movement at Anarchapulco a while back. I wanted to talk about that, and we're going to see about that. But I do like to start off with Carey. How did you become an anarchist or a libertarian?
Well, it started with one summer I was interning at a film studio, and I had been a big Obama supporter, loved him, voted for him. There's pictures of me I have posted on the internet, proof that I loved Barack Obama. It's big status. And then I rented in the film studio because it's it's a great symbol of just like not paying attention, right? Like being in the belly of the Hollywood beast.
Yes.
It was a great department. There was no one weird. They made really great films. It was very respectable. I was treated well. It was great. But it was in this film studio where I started it was 2011. And I started noticing, okay, the Arab Spring was going on. I was like, I feel like maybe I should pay attention because I had really just given all my agency to Barack Obama when I voted. I thought, okay, he's going to fix everything. That's fine. I don't have to worry about it. I started the revolution of hope and change. I can go do other things now. And so when I actually started paying attention to the news, I saw a lot of how Obama had strayed from his promises and his stated principles, which at the time I was a progressive. But then I found Ron Paul, and Ron Paul really started my journey. And then it was watching Ron Paul get completely blacked out by the media in 2012 and treated unfairly that really started me down a deeper line of questioning of like, is someone who can genuinely change the system actually going to be able to lead the system? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. And then I got into Rothbard and Spooner and all the philosophy that supported what was kind of already intuitively emerging.
Yes. So, and you've always been in California, right? Or
yeah, my whole life. I was born and raised.
Yes, I believe she's a valley girl and there is no
I
cure.
yeah, if you hear that accent, it's not fake. This is how I grew up, I swear. And no one would do this on purpose.
But yeah, but well, anyway, so you got involved. You get out into the real world and you got into the liberty movement. When did you first? What in when did you first? I think what one thing that I think happens to a lot of women in the liberty movement. They're in a place where there aren't that many women.
Yeah.
So first, they're already getting more attention than they're used to. Same way, when you see these nerdy girls who go to a school like MIT, they're suddenly getting, they never got attention in high school, and then suddenly they're getting attention at MIT. Did you have that kind of experience?
Um, I think so. Generally, yes. I think really what it is more about is being so outnumbered. I feel like that's what it's just by nature. That's how it is. It's just how it is. If you're one of like 5 women at an event of 100 people, you're going to get noticed and you're going to get some attention that mostly is welcome, that mostly is very friendly, mostly is fine. And then there's a few people who aren't quite sure how to interact. And I think this goes like not maybe it's harder for women, but I think this is just interact with humans in general. I think a lot of it has nothing to do with sex differences. It's just being a person and connecting with other people. But I have certainly been to a lot of libertarian events where there are very few women.
Yeah, the Rothbard Graduate Seminar at the Mises Institute was the one event where there were no women. You can make a joke, what do you call a woman at an Austrian economics conference? The keynote speaker.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
Yeah, I've heard that back in the 60s at the Nathaniel Branden Institute with Ayn Rand, that it was about half and half. And I went to, and the guy who runs the Ayn Rand Center Armenia, I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I saw one picture that was 16-8, 8 men and 16 women.
Whoa.
Yeah. I went to the conference in Tbilisi, which is of course nearby. We call it Georgia. I like to call it Sakartvelo. And that was maybe more women too. But outside of that, I've not really, it seems to be pretty much a worldwide thing. I don't know if there's a cultural difference over there. What do you think could be done to make this more appealing to women? Because I definitely think the liberty movement has tried to put women in positions where they're visible to try to get more women in, but that hasn't worked. And
yeah. Well, I think it's a 2-part problem, which I think this speech was a while ago that you were talking about. I think I remember addressing both of these things because I think it's a cultural and societal issue of why women tend to skew left. But then there's also an issue of what we were just talking about, of like women not feeling comfortable in libertarian spaces. But I think, for the purpose of this conversation, it's really important to talk about the progressive philosophy and feminism and how that's affected the way women vote. Because actually, I was recently working on a video. Actually, this video I filmed a couple of years ago, and I didn't release it just for whatever reason. And I was just fact checking myself and making sure that the angle I took was right, because there's I'm about to mention an example of why there aren't more women in the liberty movement. So there's this really popular meme or angle or narrative of like, repeal the 19th Amendment. Women shouldn't be allowed to vote. They're too emotional. They're too irrational. This and I'm sure some of your listeners have heard of this. And I made a video historically debunking that because it's actually so much not about gender. It's about government and statism. But I'm digressing. The point is, when you have notions like that, first of all, it's not even accurate. Oh, that's what I was trying to say. So one of the reasons women, I think, tend to skew left is what's been, I don't want to say program that takes away their agency, but there's a lot of messaging you receive growing up and a lot of feminine qualities of compassion and care and helping others, which I don't think necessarily are feminine by nature, but they're more ascribed to feminine energy. I think that's a lot easier to exploit when you have an entire culture that has no issue with statism, that believes in government, believes in representative democracy. If you're a woman and you're more inclined toward caring for others, and this political ideology says, we love caring for others, we're going to do this, and there's no mention of, well, we're going to force people to pay for these programs. Everyone is bound by the barrel of a gun at the hands of government. None of this is ever discussed. So all women are getting, left-wing women are getting, is if I care about people, if I care about the poor, if I care about the homeless and minorities, whatever it is, I have to be a leftist because these are the people who are saying they want to address it. And there's never a conversation about the violence inherent to it. I think a lot of women, maybe if they could see that more clearly, wouldn't want to be involved. And I think the other issue is that that's not really something libertarians tend to focus on. I think there are pockets of it, but there's very little discussion of how libertarian solutions can address the problems that women tend to be more concerned about these days.
Yeah, I think it was H.L. Mencken who said, when he was addressing the suffrage issue, he said, they just ought to get rid of all these regulations and that would free women. And this was before women voted. And there are issues, issues on gun control, I think certainly harms women. And really, when you think about it, what has been done more to equalize the sexes than guns?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, for a long time in a state of nature, there was this unwritten contract that I'll protect you from the lions and the grizzly bears, and I get to, make babies with you. And guns, now women can protect themselves from the lions and the grizzly bears too. It's, yeah, and not, and I don't know if some other, other things, but certainly, I don't know if you can think of some other things, but that's one thing that comes to mind. I mean. But they've never really been able to get women on, that's one thing. I mean, I think you see a lot of feminists who are out, like a few years ago, the Million Mom March or the stuff like that. And that made no sense.
Yeah. That does remind me though, because the reason I brought up this repeal the 19th Amendment thing, I sidetracked myself, but the reason I brought it up is that historically women did not always necessarily vote liberal and Democrat. I was reading an article about how women were actually considered responsible for getting, I want to say Herbert Hoover elected, and they were also considered a big force in getting Eisenhower elected. And of course, as an anarchist, this is all statism, whatever. But in the traditional left-right paradigm, Eisenhower was not considered big government compared to who he was running against, which I think was Adlai Stevenson. That might have been both years. Yeah. But women were not necessarily inherently big government. They weren't necessarily voting for Democrats down the line. So something has shifted here. And I think it has a lot to do with democratic messaging and marketing. And I think they figured that out really well.
Yeah. Well, also, there's also the gap between single women and married women, which is humongous. And it seems like the married women tend to be more conservative, but it's the single women who are definitely skewing much more to the left. What do you think? What do you think could change the culture of the liberty movement right now that might make it more conducive to bring any women? And I obviously these aren't easy, but I mean, I mean, a lot of the men in the liberty movement just have really bad game,
Yeah.
But,
Well, I think that, and this isn't, so it's okay. I have a superficial solution, but I think it requires a lot of deeper work to actually achieve. But I think a lot of women, they get into some of the ideas, maybe not the entire philosophy, but being anti-war or police brutality or corporations completely influencing the government, dishonestly, maybe not even dishonestly, they do it pretty openly now. But I think there are a lot of issues that women care about that are very much liberty oriented. And then they come to an event or they see how libertarians speak online. And there's a lot of just women are stupid, women are irrational. There's a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of men with deeply seated mommy issues who are taking it out on all women. And you know what? Maybe it's true. There are a lot of women who vote emotionally. And there are a lot of men who vote emotionally. But there are a lot of women who they do embody the qualities that a lot of libertarian men genuinely despise and can't stand. I don't want to act like this isn't reality. I don't want to pretend like every woman is just a libertarian in waiting and it's all the libertarians' fault that they haven't gotten there yet. Not at all. It's a pervasive mind virus as far as I'm concerned. The statism as a whole and Democratic ideology, Republican ideology, they're unique, but they're the same to me. But I think ultimately it has to come down to not judging people as a collective, which is funny that this needs to be said about libertarians, right? Maybe there shouldn't be such generalization about why women believe whatever they believe and more of a focus on the individual. And again, a rebranding of how this actually can help in a more broad sense of libertarian is not just a selfish ideology. And I'm sure somebody's going to be mad at me for saying that, but I think it's a thin ideology, right? Like the actual philosophy of it is quite thin, but if you want to grow it and you want to bring more people in and you want to teach them about liberty, I think you have to actually, to quote Edward Bernays, the big propagandist who was very effective, promoting government wars and CIA operations, but something he said as a term of strategies, you need to figure out what your target audience wants and what matters to them. So if liberal women are concerned about the poor and the homeless, maybe it's not the best time to be like, well, if you're poor, it's your own fault. You don't deserve any help. Like, that may be true. That may be rationally true, but also what are some free market solutions that might help? Should we talk about zoning laws and the devaluation of the dollar and the destruction of the job market and why people are poor and why people are out on the streets? I think maybe that's not going to convert every single woman, but I think that's a better chance than just saying women are emotional and stupid and that's why they're not libertarians.
Yeah, I think a lot of I do wonder if that's part of the issue. I mean, I do also think that maybe more artistic arguments would make a difference. Ayn Rand had her characters, and although one thing I've learned, there's some really great women who are into Ayn Rand, and there's some absolutely positively toxic women who are into Ayn Rand too. Yeah. That Amber Heard is an Ayn Rand fan does not surprise me. But
yeah.
But then there's some really great ones. But it seems to me though, as that maybe we're just also seeing what seems to be part of the bigger sex war that's happening right now, which I don't know how we get out of this. Do you have any ideas on how we get out of this? Because it's really scary, because it seems to me as though America is really at the forefront of that right now. And
sadly, I don't have any quick fixes. In my experience personally, and just being a member of this community for so long, people got to find some more peace, man. Like I see so much of this lashing outward and blaming other people, and there's very little consciousness around the feelings that drive that. And this has been my personal experience as well. This was not something I thought about when I made my first video or when I blowtorched my Obama shirt. This is something that's come from years of being in this community and being a person and having to figure out how to find peace in this world and within myself. And I think until that becomes more of a priority and people have the tools and inner resources to do that, they're going to keep lashing out. They're going to keep blaming. This is true of men and women. It's like a human thing to do, but it certainly colors the gender conversation and the gender wars. But to me, something and I think this is in my speech, so it's something I've thought about for a long time. I think it's really so much less about the masculine and the feminine and more bringing us back to balance for both. Like, I think women have a very imbalanced masculine and men have a very imbalanced feminine. And it's nobody's fault. It's not to say men or women did anything wrong, but I think just the nature of the culture, probably nefarious interests that are trying to cause disruption and division. And I think it's less even that. That's just a byproduct of trying to control people in general. And then who cares about the blowback and the after effects, which I think the culture wars are very much a result of that.
You're probably familiar with the concept of the victim triangle.
I'm not, actually.
Well, it's when you see things as victim, perpetrator, rescuer. And it seems like a lot of, what you'd call progressive politics, you have people who want to be the rescuers.
Yeah.
I just did a show, for example, about a case where these people were lobbying to require, wait staff to be paid minimum wage, and the restaurant owners and the wait staff came out against it. But you have these champions of busybodies who want to help the restaurant employees, and I think there's a lot of, as I've said, the white anti-racists are a lot worse than the African-American ones. And I will say too, the male feminists are a lot worse than the female feminists. I think, and I've got to say, when I deal with male feminists, I am as rude to them as I can possibly be. And because I think once the male feminists go away, the whole thing will evaporate. But it seems like to me there's this culture of looking for victims and making up victim stories where a victim story doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you see anything like that personally, but
yeah, for sure. And I think it still comes back to people are suffering, they're hurt, I think in many contexts, it has absolutely nothing to do with government and the outside world. I think this is family stuff. This is intergenerational stuff. This is being human stuff. But that's really hard to sit with. And I know this because I've been trying to do it for several years. Like, it's like you have to bring your attention back to it truly moment to moment. This isn't like a once a day thing where you're like, yes, my chest is kind of gripped because I feel anxious. Okay, moving on. No, it's like a day to day, moment to moment thing. And I think when you're not in touch with that, there's a lot more opportunity for that unconscious to run the show and to look for blame, to look for someone to be responsible for why I'm upset and and this is so libertarian to me. Like the concept of taking responsibility for your feelings, like it's nobody else's job. Yeah. And when you're lashing out at other people, look, maybe there's even merit to what you're saying. Like, clearly there's merit to me, being upset about certain things the government does. And that's different because that's a conversation about violence and morals versus, just interpersonal psychology and blaming people. But it's a lot easier to be angry and to blame someone else than to sit with very deeply rooted feelings and discomfort that might be causing your suffering a lot more than that random feminist or that random racist or whatever, the random misogynist. Okay, no, I don't really want to associate with them, but am I their victim? No, I'm not their victim. They haven't done anything to me. I have a problem with it's the identification of self with victimhood and that becoming a feature of someone's personality.
That's definitely something I find offensive too. And I think I probably do it too much, which means I hate it when I see it in other people. The whole attitude of playing the victim and I'm very careful now too. And I wonder, is this person going to make up a victim story about this interaction? It's, I think a lot of men wonder about that. I remember I was in the gym and when I'm at the gym, I just kind of go into my zone. And like a guy came over to me and said, "Can you stop staring at my girlfriend?" I'm like, I didn't even know your girlfriend was there. It's like, why are you telling me this? And but it feels like everybody's walking on eggs, and I was, one of the big things, too, that came up in a group I'm in yesterday is that it's offensive to use the words male and female as nouns. You should say men or women. And I just,
Thank you for your feedback. I will not be complying.
Well, one reason why I use those words is because they're actually there aren't that many terms that are age neutral.
Yeah.
I can say a male and it's 0 to 100. Oh, hi there. Who is that?
This is a female named Revere.
Named what?
Her name's Revere. Like
hi, Revere, like Paul Revere, yes.
Yeah, she likes to say hi when she can tell him.
Please be careful, because I did have a situation where a cat pulled out a guy's microphone. But other than that,
we got it.
Revere is very welcome. Hi, Revere.
Yeah,
we love having dogs on videos are cool. Yeah,
cool.
How old is Revere?
She's 5.
Oh yeah,
she's growing up fast. Yeah.
What breed is that?
She's half purebred cattle dog and then half like Mexican street dog. So it's like a little bit of pit bull and mini schnauzer. And then they call it super mutt because her breed's just so diluted. It's funny because being in Acapulco, I would always see the street dogs. And I'm like, I want a dog like that. And then through a rescue, I ended up getting a dog like that.
Some street dogs can be very aggressive, but you got to be.
Yeah.
But yes.
Sorry to interrupt. We're talking about the ideas of male and female.
I didn't discourage it. I just saw Revere and I had to say hi. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So anyway, we might all be better off if we had pets, because
yeah, really.
I think that's part of it too. Though. I think a lot of us people are getting pets and living alone with pets because they're not, they really need the touch of a partner. And, and it's not just sex; they just need touch.
Yeah,
they need hugs. And you get all of that with your dog, and your dog never says no.
No, she doesn't. Yeah, no, but I think that's touching on something that's really a big aspect of this. All this discord is people are really lonely. They're really disconnected. They don't have community like they used to. And I think they also don't have the interpersonal skills like they used to, which I think is partly a result of the internet. Like we're all so conditioned to, like, we live online. There's not much human interaction, and I'm very much an introvert. So I'm kind of I like being alone. Maybe, babe. but point, like, there's a point where, like, it's just not healthy, to be so disconnected from people. And I think actually that's a factor in one of, like, when you go to these libertarian events, I think it's a lot of people who are starving for social interaction, which is so understandable and human. But I think then sometimes that creates some awkward interactions.
It does. The people can, and some of these people, I'm afraid, almost invest too much in it. I mean, I've said to some people, especially in the party, said, I'm kind of worried about you. I mean, just take care of yourself, before you take care of the party. But they're good people. But yeah, and that is true. I do wonder but it also seems like to me, I don't know what kind of, it seemed like when my parents got married, and that was in the early 50s, though, you just got married and it wasn't really that hard. It's gotten harder just because it seems like to me you can't just, I mean, it doesn't just appear out of the sky anymore, but it seems like maybe for them it did. I don't know. Maybe it's just because everybody was more encouraged to get married, or do you think, I mean.
Yeah, I think it was more culturally, that's just what you did. And I think there was less choice around it, because I remember my mom telling me that, so she grew up with 3 brothers, and
Yes.
So it was 1 girl and 3 boys, and my mom was the only one who was ever told, you need to get married. You need to go to school because you need to find a husband. So I think a lot of it is cultural, and I'm sure there are people who think that was for the best and things would be a lot better off if it were still that way. But it's not. And a lot of that is the effect of feminism. It's also, economic conditions of people have to work. More women have to work now to survive. But I do think there used to be more of a cultural priority placed on marriage, and I think that's a good thing. And I think it seemed maybe a lot more harmonious because women weren't really in a position to leave marriages that were not working. And I think, speaking as the child of divorce, I think in some cases you should leave. Like, it's worse for the child to be growing up in a completely dysfunctional marriage than it is for there to be some separation there. And I know some people would disagree with that. In my experience, it was so much better that my parents chose not to be together. I think I would be way worse off had they stayed and pretended they had any semblance of a happy marriage. So I think that there's something to be said for just women getting the agency to leave really bad situations. That being said, I think in a lot of cases, people are not trying enough to save the marriage. And I think that has to do, again, with the lack of emotional skills and the ability to problem solve and to hold space for each other's difficult feelings and to truly see each other and be compassionate and allow whatever needs to arise to arise.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if we've ever really learned how to have great relationships, and maybe we have to, we fixate too much on the great stories that work out really well. I mean, there was this couple, that I knew got together when they were 10 years old. And as far as I know, they're still together now. And I think we're all thinking, I wish we all could have been like that,
Yeah.
but they just got lucky, and, they've never known anybody else. And I do think you need to, and maybe because we're not going out there and meeting people. I mean, I would probably want to, if I had kids, I'd probably want them to encourage them not to be exclusive when they're young, just so they can really go out and try all the different flavors of ice cream,
Yeah. All right.
before you settle on one for your life. Because I do wonder if we've really studied what makes relationships works, because I don't think they're obvious. And I think this is why a lot of dating sites are complete failures.
Yeah.
I mean, I said my parents were 36 and 39. I've noticed I get along really well when I meet the rare woman who has that same situation, who had parents who were a lot older, had brothers who were a lot older. I do think the family structure makes a difference. And I've also noticed it's a lot easier to get along with women who had brothers. I think maybe they just learned, okay, men are good. This is an example of a good man, and so they understand men a little better than, I think, in some cases too, with so many parents having onlys now, it's
Yeah.
really getting to much stranger situation. But
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because I've noticed that when men grew up with sisters, they tend to have slightly more understanding of how women tick. Like there's a little bit more, it's like, okay, if a woman's just having a day, okay, that's just let it pass. She's going to be upset for a day. And like, there's just kind of an understanding of like, okay, sometimes that's just how it is.
what do you think about, you occasionally hear the accusations of mansplaining?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that or not? Because
It's something I never would have noticed had it not been a term. It might have just been like, oh, this person's really arrogant. Shut up. I don't need to hear it. I don't think it's a gendered thing, because I have heard so many women who can't shut up, who like they're driven by the same ego desire. And when I say ego, I don't even think it's a bad thing. It's just a part of self. And I think it's good if you can be more aware of it and not let it completely run the show. But I think man or woman, if someone just keeps talking, it's not really about being a man or a woman. It's like there's an ego and there's a need to be seen and a need to feel like you're providing value and worth. And for me, it's been so much more peaceful to look at people as humans as opposed to trying to turn them into men or women, or, because I think there really is a commonality. There are for sure differences. There's a lot of big differences between men and women, and we're all still human, and we all have basic needs of being seen, feeling loved, feeling connected to others, like we were talking about, of people just being isolated. And that's so human. And maybe the lack of it manifests differently in men and women, but I still see it as, well, there's an acting out there. There's an unconscious acting out because needs aren't being met.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cases where that, and I think the mother wounds can be really big. When you have that, maybe the mother who is just a little distant or not a good listener, but we have wounds on both sides. I definitely think, especially a lot of girls can have father wounds, but I think boys have father wounds too. It's
for sure.
I don't know how we can really learn how to be, maybe if we just learn to talk to each other, but it seems like we're not doing that. It seems like in some cases we might be getting worse.
Yeah. And I think now that you're mentioning that, I think there is something really, as long as we're talking about this stuff and roots and causes and solutions, I think there's something really to be said about the general authoritarian quality of parenting. It really mirrors statism of like, well, you're going to do what I say and you're going to do things my way. Why? Because I said so, for the sake of authority. Yeah. Because I brought you into this world and I can take you out. Like, I think this is shifting in a large way, but again, it's not the parents' fault. I don't want to act like parents are just evil and they don't love their kids. They're doing the best they know how based on what their parents did, and so on and so on. And it gets passed down and passed down. And I think there's a lot of room to allow children to feel their feelings. And I think especially with boys, it's don't cry, bottle it up, get over it. It's not a big deal. And what does that do when a child is feeling authentic, real big feelings, and the adults in their lives, who are the biggest authorities they know, those are the people who know everything, they're telling them it's not valid. Suck it up. It's not going to go away. It doesn't just go away. It just gets discounted. And people, and I think especially boys, learn, I'm not allowed to feel this. This is not valid. This is not legitimate. I have to shove it down. And to me, that's when it really becomes the most dangerous for men or women, when it's pushed into darkness and it's not allowed to be seen.
I think there's also a problem too, because it seems like now men are getting punished just for asking. Have you heard the story of Elevator Gate?
No. Wait, maybe, but I don't remember what it was.
This was at an atheist conference. And the woman gets into an elevator and a guy happens to go in with her at the same time. And he says something like, oh, would you like to get coffee while they're in the elevator? So later she comes out and says, this guy asked me, for coffee in the elevator. So you have cases where men are, approaching the woman saying no. The guy is politely walking away, but the guy is still getting, raked over the coals for this. It's like somehow the guy is supposed to know a priori, and we don't know that.
Yeah. And I think it seems to me that there was a bit of a cultural backswing. So for a long time, it was very true. I watched shows from like 25 years ago, and there's such open misogyny and disrespect. And like at the time, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. And culturally, that's really changed. But there was a time where I think women felt very unheard. They felt very not allowed to speak out against it. I just have to take it. If this guy's being creepy and gross with me, I just have to, like, I can't cause a problem. I don't want to cause drama. I'm just going to not going to say anything. I've been in that position myself. But I think that with Me Too and the pushing back against that, it's now kind of going the other way. And I think a lot of women are overreacting and taking it out for whatever reason. I don't know what these women are feeling specifically, but I think there's very much a sense of like, I'm the good person now. I'm not the oppressed. And here are these bad people, these men, and they collectivize them all because people like to do that. We like to put people in groups, but it becomes men are my problem and I'm not going to take it anymore. And I have power now. So I'm going to push back. And again, what's interesting about that is I say that out loud. I'm like, but there's also still such a victim mentality to it. So it's like these conflicting dynamics of like, on one hand, I'm strong and I'm empowered. And on the other, I'm still a victim and everybody is out to get me. So it's like, of course, people are having a hard time. You're living with conflicting beliefs.
Yeah. It's almost like you're bullying people by playing victim and just people go along with that. And I think men men aren't a fan of that, but also I do think there are times where men want to make it right, but they're never really given a chance to make it right.
Yeah.
This is an example I use a lot. A restaurant manager walks around the restaurant and he just stops by and says, "Oh, how was your food?" And one of them says, "It was okay." And then he says, "Is there anything I did for you?" She said, "No." And then she pays her bill, walks out and goes outside the restaurant and said, "That place was terrible."
Yeah. All right.
The guy, left an opening to say, "Hey, if there's something wrong, I'll fix it." And he doesn't get a chance to fix it. And, and if maybe he gets a chance to fix it, she ends up with a happy experience and it ends up creating, really a lose for both sides. And
right. And so I think the question then is, why do so many women still feel like there's this, like, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to upset anyone. Because I can totally relate to that. And it's been a practice for me to learn how to stand up for myself and speak up for myself and be clear about things. Like I think and I'm in my 30s, even as a little girl, it is a slightly different messaging you get growing up of like, oh, well, you want to be pretty and quiet and you don't want to upset anyone and you're so sweet. Like when you're constantly praised for being sweet and polite. And I was very much like a little bootlicker in elementary school. And it caused me a lot of anxiety. But when I got to elementary school, it's like, oh God, I got to do what they say. I have to do everything they asked me to. And there was a battle with my kindergarten teacher because I didn't want to play Duck, Duck, Goose. I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to play. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't like chasing people around. I didn't like being put on the spot. So I just civil disobedience. I just refused to play. For months, I would not play. They'd sit me on the bench. And eventually one day I played and I got rewarded for it. So it's like these little things that you don't think much of. What did that teach me? Oh, you're special and you're good if you do what they tell you to do. You should keep doing that because you're going to get praise. And it's like these little things that you don't even think much about. And I'm speaking even more broadly now. It's not even a gendered thing. I just kind of, went down a winding road there. But there's certainly, as a little girl growing up, I learned personally, whether from my grandparents or things my mom had learned or the teachers in school, it's like, well, little girls are sweet and they do what they're told and they're nice to people, and I think in general, it's good to be kind to people. I think it's good to be sweet. But I think when it's framed as like just an innate characteristic that you have to be, as opposed to something that as humans, this is good. It's like these little, just tiny little qualities and nuances of messaging that I think make a huge difference.
Yeah. Another stereotype we hear about, what do you think about what is commonly called the Karen? And it's such a great name. I hate to see it ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, the woman who calls the police because your fence is too high, or that case in Georgia where the kid was walking down the street at 10 years old and says, "Oh, this kid's out there walking alone. That's dangerous." It's maybe it's not all, maybe it's men doing this too. I don't know, but do you think that's a fair stereotype or not?
I think so. And it's like, it seems to me, and again, this is just off the top of my head, if we're talking about this, certainly the meme is women. Like there are no memes of like the busybody male who, I mean, maybe there are, I haven't seen them. They're not as pervasive. They don't resonate as much with people. And it seems to me so much of this is like, there's someone in there that wants to do good. And I think they think that calling the cops is good and helpful. And they're helping the community. And it's this collectivized idea of society. Like, well, I'm part of the society. I have a civic duty to do something about it, which I think can be applied to voting and so many other aspects of statism. But it seems like you take a very programmed belief that the government is here to help, and they're here to keep order and keep civilization going and prevent barbarism and all the bad actors. And then I think you add in, which I think is true of most people's decisions to do anything, you add in whatever unconscious emotions are running the show. Maybe this person felt disempowered as a child. I don't know, who knows? But this is an adulthood chance to have power, to have agency, to be like, something's going on and I'm going to do something about it. And there are probably better ways to de-escalate a situation or address it than calling the cops, because rarely is that really the best thing to do that has the best outcomes. But I think I try these days because there's a part of me that really wants to judge. Be like, oh my God, what the is wrong with you? You're a statist, you're violent, you like big daddy government to come do it for you. And I think that's valid. And I try to challenge myself to understand without accepting what they're doing, without saying it's okay and they should be allowed to do that. I try to understand what they're feeling that might be driving this.
I would say it's a desire to feel important. Mm-hmm. Like you did something, it's I don't know. What do you think is, I grew up in the era where, the first time we saw dirty pictures were in magazines. How do you think it is for girls now, or even girls in the 90s or the aughts? It's a very different world. Do you think girls are having issues because kids and teens tend to make a lot of unfair comparisons? The boys want to be as good as Pat Mahomes. The girls want to be as pretty as Taylor Swift. What do you make of? Do you think it's gotten harder for kids now, or I don't really know, because I grew up I grew up without connectivity, thank goodness.
Yeah, right. I think it's harder specifically in a sense of how unreal social media has become. They've done studies on young girls and they want to get plastic surgery, and it's like the Snapchat filter effect. They want to look like they do in their filters. And so I think that's unique, like the degree of unattainability of these beauty standards. And this is actually something I want to write a lot more about, but when I was growing up I'm a millennial. When I was growing up, I had internet, but it wasn't we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have Snapchat. So we had the internet, and then I had my magazines. I had my girls' magazines. And it was the same thing. It's all these unattainable standards. And what I think, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I think the reason is because I think it's so important, and it's a root of so many problems. But when I look back on that, so I developed body dysmorphia when I was like 13 or 14. And it's against the backdrop of my parents getting divorced, my grandma dying, my grandpa dying, my dog dying. Like, there's a lot going on here. And there's a lot of suffering going on for a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl. But what was the underlying belief of something that was really plaguing? It was, I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy. And when you look at these magazines, these aspirational magazines, the messaging, whether conscious or not, I think it's conscious based on what I know about how calculated marketing is. It's very much a feeling of like, well, these people are lovable. If I want to be lovable, I need to buy this makeup and have this kind of hair and be this kind of skinny. And it's just a feeling of inadequacy. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is I don't think I would have been as susceptible to that had I had a little more grounding in the family system. Had I been a little more assured of, you are lovable, we love you, you matter exactly as you are, you're enough. And I love my parents so much. I'm so close to them. I'm not mad at them that they weren't able to do that in those times. And they grew up in the way that they grew up, and my grandparents did. And this is like generations back in my family of what I was absorbing. But when we talk about culture, I think the women and girls and men who are most susceptible to that kind of messaging are the ones who didn't get what they were needing as children. And okay, you could grow up in a stable home where your parents love you, and you might feel a little insecure when you look at images of beautiful women and the beauty standards, but I think you're going to be a lot more susceptible to what they're selling and that kind of messaging when you're missing it, when you didn't grow up feeling secure and loved. Like, you're going to want to feel loved, and if this is what you're hearing makes you lovable, well, of course you're going to be into it. So I struggled with that for a very, very long time.
Yeah. If I don't have, any girls, but if I have a little girl and she just says, what do I get to do to get boys to like me? I'm just going to tell her, be fun. If it's fun to be around you, boys will want to be around you.
Yeah.
that's more important than anything.
Yeah. My mom used to tell me the boys like you because you're smart, Carey. And like, which is better, I think, than like, well, they like you just because you're pretty. But also it just becomes like, well, if you want to be likable, you better be smart. And she didn't mean it that way, of course. But like, children are wild, man. Having spent with my family, just who knows what a kid's going to take a meaning to be, go ahead.
The smart boys will appreciate you for being a smart girl, and this is the thing too. And granted, you can't play dumb with smart boys. We'll figure it out. Yes. We always do. Yeah. Trust me. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of, but yeah, playing dumb doesn't work. But I don't know if you pay any attention to some of the men in what I call the red pill circles. But one thing I hear a lot from these guys is things like chase excellence, not women. Mm-hmm. I think there's some truth to that.
Yes and no. Like, but again, it's like, for me, it's not gendered. I think all people should chase excellence. I think chase too is like a bit of I think they could have chosen a better word because there's such a grasping quality to it. And so just be excellent, again, like, well, that's just semantics. It's hard to just be excellent. Yeah. You have to do something. But I think there is truth to that. But I think that's also coupled with very much like, I hate women. Women suck. They just add problems to your life. And there are a lot of women who do that. I don't want to I don't want to sound like I'm gaslighting people. It's like, no, all women are beautiful angels. And if you have a problem, no, it's not like that. There are a lot of humans with very deep-seated problems. And a lot of those humans are women. But I think it's interesting. It's like that Andrew Tate narrative of I hate women. They're useless. I'm virtuous for XYZ, and it has nothing to do with women. And it's like, I don't know. I saw him tweet something about an interaction he had with his parents as a child that I'm like, well, that makes sense.
I didn't hear about that. His parents got divorced. The one thing I know about his dad too is his dad was actually a very good chess player, which always seemed kind of interesting. You got this guy who's a boxer, a kickboxer, but he also plays chess. It definitely, the thing about Tate is great at telling stories, and he's very quotable. I mean, I can understand why he's popular, but I also think in some ways he's a fraud. But I don't think he ever would have existed 40 years ago. It's just, I think a lot of, when you have so many boys who are telling, it's bad to be boys, and he's saying it's okay to be a boy, it's okay to be a man, but and I think in some cases, boys need to do that. Because they also say, they say you need to have a mission, and always be on your mission, whether it be, Dale Earnhardt, had his mission, he got divorced his first wife, but then he found a second wife who, and what his mission was just to race cars. So I don't know what you think about, a guy having his mission or not.
No, I think a mission is wonderful. I think it's very attractive. It's like I want everyone to have purpose. I want them to feel dedicated to that purpose, to be able to have the inner resources to achieve whatever goal they set their mind to. I think what it is about Andrew Tate that I think 10 years ago, I would have thought he was a picture of masculinity, of like, oh, this is peak masculinity. Yeah. He's so tough. He's so abrasive. He's so aggressive. I love that. And I think these are what we consider to be masculine qualities. But when I read what he says now, I just kind of feel sad for the little boy in there who feels such a need to posture and to like over puff up his chest and to prove something. It comes off to me as someone who needs to prove something, which is not to say that aggression is inherently bad. I don't. There's so many qualities of masculinity, and I'm not a man, so I don't want to talk like I understand the experience. I understand all those nuances, but when I see someone who is actively, like the tweets I've seen from him, I had to mute the guy because there's so much just like he hates women. Like he does not see value in women beyond whatever little, ideas he believes that they should have a role in, whatever. But to me, there's such a weakness to it. Like to be that threatened by anyone really, but to lash out, to be so emotional, because he's quite emotional. If you read his tweets, there's a lot of emotion there. I know that the standard belief is women are emotional and men are rational, but like someone I knew said once, like, well, anger is an emotion though. and I think there's something to be said for men not being allowed to feel anger and not being allowed to feel other feelings. Like that's an entire other conversation if we want to talk about how restricted and really diminished men are in terms of their feelings. Like I think that is and what people like to call toxic masculinity, I think can all be addressed by exploring that, of men not being able to have feelings and not allowed to express themselves. But when I see Andrew Tate going off like that, I just see someone who is not emotionally whole. They're a bit fragmented as far as I can tell.
I don't know everything about his personal life, and it's hard to say. Something else too that I've always found intriguing, and I call it the Farrah Fawcett syndrome. Mm-hmm. It's when a woman who can have probably anybody she wants, and yet she constantly gets with men who treat her like dirt.
Yeah.
You could also want to go back to another generation, call it the Lana Turner syndrome. What do you mean? Because I think there is probably, I'd say 20 to 25% of women do want to be treated like shit, and they don't seem to be able to. It seems like it's an addiction that can't be cured.
Yeah. It's I've been there. I know what that feels like. And I think it comes down to a fundamental lack of self-worth. It doesn't matter if you're told you're pretty your whole life, if your dad left, or even your mom, who knows? Like if you were not made to feel as a child that you were lovable and you were worthy, you might act that out in the world of like, well, I'm not worthy, so I'm going to find people who treat me like crap, to the extent that it's like even being treated well feels like weakness. Like, what a loser. That guy like authentically likes me. Wow, that's really weak. I don't want anything to do with that. Like I've been there. I've had that. And I wasn't consciously thinking those exact words, but when I reflect back on my behavior and my feelings, that's what it was. It's like, that guy likes me? What a loser. I'm worthless. So if he likes me, he's also worthless. Like I need somebody who can't see my value and that I have to strive to get their validation, because maybe that's a dynamic I had as a child, and it's, again, is it anyone's fault? I don't think so, outside of like conscious abuse. But even when there's abuse going on, it's like, well, what happened to that person doing the abuse? Not to condone the abuse, not to say it's ever okay. It's never okay. But just to try to understand, like if we want to solve these problems, we kind of have to look at where they're coming from, as opposed to just like kind of moralistic dictating of the problem.
I think maybe one problem here too is, and they've done studies on this, don't praise kids with be verbs. I mean, don't say, don't tell a kid like, oh, you're really smart. Tell the kid, you did a really good job, because they tend to see doing a good job as something that they choose,
right,
instead of something that they either are or they aren't.
Yeah, for sure.
Because and maybe girls hear that more often. It's than boys do. They hear the because it doesn't really work. I mean, if my kid won a marathon, I'd say, well, you did a really great job today. It's just said you're really fast, because you tend to see it as something you can work on. Also, nowadays, I mean, do you, if a libertarian guy came up to you and said, Carey, can you tell me how to find a good libertarian woman? What would you tell the guy?
Oh, no.
You don't want to answer this question.
What would I tell the guy? Well, I'll be the broken record and just what's going on with you, man? Like, how are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you grounded? Like, are you in tune with your feelings? Because I think so much, and I think this is true
Yeah.
of women even more than men. There's such a seeking out of the opposite sex, or maybe the same sex, whatever your preference is. Like, there's such a seeking out of another person outside yourself to make you whole and to make you
Yeah.
happy. Like, and it's such a toxic, in my view, such a toxic the depiction of love, of like, you complete me. And this is all that's portrayed when we're talking about
Yeah.
romance in media and culture. It's like, I wasn't whole and now I'm whole. It's this lack of completeness as your own being. And I think especially as a libertarian, you want to be with somebody who has a sense of self-ownership and a sense of completion without somebody else having to come in and do it for them.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. I can't think of anything else on this topic we need to cover right now. I don't know if there's anything else you can think of.
I think really, if I have a theory on why women are so messed up. We could get into that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I think there's two conflicting dynamics here, which is that on one hand, for about as long as there has been conscious humanity, there's been a role for women, which has been, you make the babies and you take care of the home and the man supports you and protects you. But really, like, it's pretty hard to survive without a man. Like, you're going to need somebody to hunt for you and to protect your offspring. So I think there's a biological dynamic here that's then reinforced by the culture that really was just going along with the biology. I mean, through most of history, women were wives. Like, they were mothers and wives. And I don't think it's like feminist to acknowledge this, because I don't consider myself a feminist, but like, this was the dynamic for a very long time. And then came some women who were like, no, this is not okay. We want some more freedom. I think the first wave feminists had some good points. As far as suffrage, I mean, who cares? I'm an anarchist. That's not really, that's not my issue. But I think there was a lot to be said, like things that Voltairine de Cleyre was writing about back in the 1800s. And she was quite radical. I think some of the things she was describing, I was like, I don't know if that's a fair way to put it, lady. But all the same, there was genuine discontent and lack of agency. And then came more modern feminism, and that, as far as I can tell, really, whether conscious or not, became about like masculinizing women. Of feminism is women can do whatever men do. You're just as equal, when we're clearly absolutely not equal, and that's a good thing. But there was such I don't know if it was top down or bottom up. I don't know enough about the history of feminism, but it's very much a mentality of, you're independent, you can do whatever you want, you can have a career, and that's very much at odds with the generational program of like, no, you need to find a husband and you want to have kids and you need a man to make you happy. And I think this intersection, this conflict, I think creates so much suffering in women and so much confusion. Yeah. And there's this trope of like a woman who sleeps around, and that for feminists, maybe that's empowerment. And she's free and she's liberated. And then if you look at the trad perspective, it's like, well, she's a slut. It's just, and her daddy didn't love her. And I think there is something to that, of if you're going around seeking validation through physical interaction with other people, I don't really think your problem is with the men. It's something much deeper, that you're seeking out this wholeness, this sense of validation from someone else. So, it comes down to just, we all need to love ourselves a little more and learn that we're all divine beings who are worthy of love. But I think these conflicting narratives that women receive creates a lot of suffering and a lot of confusion, because they think that they want this career, but then they also think that they want a husband, and I'm not saying those things are at odds. They don't have to be at odds, but I think it's two very different molds of what it is to be a woman, and we're still receiving both. Like, my favorite thing is, like, when I was a little girl and I had Barbies, there was almost always a Ken to go with it. There's always a prince to go with your Disney princess Barbie. And I don't think boys receive anything similar, which I think is a reflection, again, of the biology. I think women, I loved my baby doll. I loved her. I loved my little dolls and my little stuffed horses. And like, there aren't a lot of boys who love baby dolls, And I don't think that's just cultural.
Well, G.I. Joe doesn't have a girlfriend. Yeah, that's
right.
I do think eventually that maybe with life extension, if we get to that point where we can live to 150, women can stay home, and then when they're 50 years old, go out and have a long career. And I'll say I'm not a feminist, but my best supervisors were women. And I'll tell you why is they see through all the bullshit. They know who works and they know who doesn't. Whereas men just want people working under them who'll schmooze them and tell them how great they are. The women actually want employees who are real. That's older women.
Yeah.
Not younger women haven't developed those kind of skills yet, but the older women, they were great. They were great women to work for. They really appreciated it that you showed up. They had good attitudes, and they do really, really good work. I really do think feminism kind of went from, Amelia Earhart or these strong, it was about saying I can do things, that you can do, and now it seems to be more about rescuing victims, which I think is a toxic thing. I mean, I was 7 or 8 years old, and I love Charlie's Angels, and I think it was I think I just like women who kicked ass but were still very feminine.
Right.
Yeah, the TV show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the same way. It's you end up, but yeah, you don't want. And I do look back now, especially the way Archie Bunker treated Edith. I mean, I'm just like,
oh no,
that really isn't funny anymore.
Right.
The biggest, but it definitely, maybe we are growing out of this. Before, I don't know how much more time you got, but I do want to talk about, let's talk about censorship. You were part,
Okay.
I've had somebody who was part of the great Facebook purge, as it's called. What do you remember about all that?
I remember knowing that something was coming. I joined the Anti-Media in 2014. They'd been around since 2012.
Yes.
And I joined at about 200,000 likes on Facebook, which is, at this time, Facebook was where people got their news. People were still using it. And when we were banned, we had 2.2 million. So I was there for
likes.
Followers, likes. I can't remember exactly on Facebook. I hate Facebook.
Facebook pages, likes. Yeah. You're never on Facebook. You're not hard to find. That's.
I have the page. I didn't post on it for years, in large part because of the bans. I was so angry. But we knew something was coming because after the 2016 election, our algorithm reach had really dropped. We were really struggling to reach the numbers of people and to build. We lost our momentum, and just the reach was not there. Where we used to be reaching millions of people every week, and it just kept dropping and dropping, and we were like, it's not great. But our founder was pretty good at bypassing the algos, and algos is something you type, you don't really say that, the algorithms, and he was doing a good job. But then Alex Jones was banned that August, and we went okay, not great, but we're not quite in this. Alex Jones is his own show, and that's a separate thing than us. I mean, but we're getting kind of close. It's getting a little uncomfortable. And then by October, we were gone. We thought we had more time. We knew something was coming, but we definitely thought we had more than a couple months. And they banned our Facebook page in the morning. And then by the afternoon, they banned our Twitter. They had banned my personal Twitter. So they knew us by name, and they went after us by name. It wasn't just here's this organization. They had looked into it enough to know who the people running the organization were. And they banned one of our other founders. And once the Twitter bans came, at first I was like, no, we're going to get it back. This is just a Facebook glitch. It'll be fine. And then when the Twitter bans came in, it was like, I think maybe not. And we had a representative at Facebook as well, because we were such a large page. We had someone a liaison at Facebook, and we had messaged her, not me, our founder messaged her, and what happened, what's going on. And she said, oh yeah, you're at the top of the pile. We're going to deal with your appeal. Never heard from them again. Never got an answer from our appeal. She stopped replying to our founders' emails, and that's it. Never again. Gone forever. And same with Twitter. They came back with a bogus justification for my ban. First, the original notice was blank. It says your violations of the Twitter rules specifically for blank. And then they came back and said I was manipulating user experiences, which is I posted a video once a month. I was doing nothing of the kind, but it was vague enough that I think they could get away with it. And all these years later, we were not mentioned in the Twitter files, even though they mentioned the Atlantic Council department that we think might have been involved. They even mentioned it, but didn't mention us. So I'm curious what happened there.
I noticed that too. And you weren't the only ones. Who else was involved with that? Or who else was a victim of that?
There's the Free Thought Project,
Yeah, the
which
free
they were
thought.
very big. Police the
Yeah,
Police, which is run by the same guy, Jason Bassler.
yeah, I
I'm
know
not sure.
Jason.
Yeah, I don't know if he lost his personal accounts. He might have though, but I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah,
But they lost so many followers and so many years of work. And Rachel Blevins, who I think still is doing independent reporting now.
yeah,
I think there was a page called Hemp, like hemp, the crop, like just
yeah.
these things that were all wiped out.
Yeah, I remember, and I remember a year later, CrossFit actually put out that thing and said we're suspending the use of Facebook,
Hmm.
and they put out all these reasons why, and it was such a damning letter. I don't know if social media is ever going to be saved, but I think the one thing you need to do is you need to just somebody should set up social media and not make it fee based.
Yeah.
The problem is it's free. It's not, strictly
Yeah.
speaking. You're not a customer.
Yeah.
But we opened up this public square, and now it's
Yeah.
it's a mess, and I don't know, and I don't know where we'd be without Twitter right now. I think it'd be I'm glad Elon bought it, but certainly getting a lot. I also got to ask, any opinions on the man in Argentina?
Honestly, I'm not super informed on it, so I don't want to speak extensively. All I can speak to are like things I've seen in my Twitter feed. So please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It seems like he's doing some really great stuff economically, but there's also some very intricate dancing with the status and the ruling apparatuses throughout the world that, which maybe you just have to do it if you want to be in power, if you want to have the ability to do what he's doing domestically.
Yeah.
Maybe you do have to play ball. But I do think there's like some concerning things in terms of like the technocrats and Israel
Oh yeah. Yeah. You made that cool video about Israel. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. But Javier Milei, though, here's a guy who was a lead singer in a Rolling Stone cover band. I mean, this is a guy who knows how to get crowds going. He knows how to, if there were more libertarians who had this kind of personality, our movement would be a lot better off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the problem. We need to, and I think he genuinely likes people, but he will occasionally say something that's not nice. Their equivalent of Anthony Fauci died back in October, and he referred to that man as hijo de puta, which translates to son of whore.
Oh my God.
Yes. I don't know if they do things like that more down there, but it's definitely worth talking about. You're not who else? You just kind of do things on your own, because I think I probably saw you at Anarcho-Pulco once, but you're not really. Or maybe you go to Freedom Fest or anything, but you're just kind of doing things on your own, it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a lone wolf. I did recently join Derek. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Derek Bros.
Oh, yes. I'm definitely familiar with Derek's work. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has started an independent media alliance, which I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be doing, but I know there's panels, and we're just trying to form a little, I don't want to even say team, but a network of journalists and reporters who have stuck to principle and have not fallen back down the statist rabbit hole the last several years. So I'm glad to be a part of that. I love his work, and we work together at the Anti-Media. So I know him from quite a ways back.
Yeah, I'm really worried about the state of the liberty movement right now. I mean, first, and I don't know what you thought, but most of the people in the Anarcho-Pulco crowd didn't fall for it, but I was amazed that so many good people that I thought were good people thought this was, we've got to be careful, this big bad virus, and we've got to, forced vaccinations and stuff like that. And then I see the Libertarian Party go the other way, and I'm just, I don't trust him at all. I don't trust Trump at all. I don't think you do either.
No, I definitely do not. But I see the appeal. I think there's something I've talked about with one of my mentors a lot is people's need for certainty. There's such a grasping for, they're not good with the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And whether it's the uncertainty of COVID or the uncertainty of maybe Trump's not going to keep all of his promises, it's really hard for people to be in that uncertainty. And I've seen some people who libertarians voted for Trump, and they're being very scrutinizing of who he's been appointing. But then there's people who cannot face it. They will not acknowledge that he's appointing Bush administration neocons and people very much from the establishment, and they can't. They can't do it because they needed that certainty that Donald Trump is for sure going to bring libertarianism mainstream. And if it happens, cool. I mean, that's a net win. My pride can take it if I'm wrong, but I do not see that happening outside of little crumbs left and right. And I think it's going to be really, I don't think this is the way.
This is sometimes what I will say, why I've gotten so interested in Milei. And I just say to people, where else is there hope?
Yeah.
What if not Milei? What is there to believe in? I mean, I think we do need something to believe in, and just in a time like this, it's really, wild where this is happening. I don't know. I do think social media has made the communication a lot worse. I think it's interesting too, maybe not social media, but I can remember in email groups, somebody would write three paragraphs, and then somebody else would write back with 3 paragraphs and 3 paragraphs, and that would be the exchange. And now that's like 3 words, 3 words, 3 words, 3 words. I think the earlier forms of communication were working much better than they are now. Now it's just all sound bites, and it's definitely, and it seems to really be, they're trying to get us off of computers and onto phones, which I find very troubling. Yeah, I don't know how much you pay attention also to what's going on with some of the surveillance stuff that Derek Rose likes to talk about.
Yeah. Was there something specific more recently, or just the entire police state?
Yeah, Peter Thiel and into that, because I've been trying to get Derek on here too, just to talk about that, because it's such an important topic. But So you managed to do all this full time, or is it just a part-time thing for you?
It's been part-time since losing the anti-media, but I'm trying to make it full-time again. So that's why I started my Substack, and I'm loving that. And I've been more active. I took some time off for a lot of reasons, but just this past couple of months, I've ramped it back up again, and it feels really good, and it feels very aligned with my purpose. And I'm grateful to be able to do it at all.
Yeah. Oh, you brought up some things, some things that you thought healed yourself. What were those things that some books and other things? By the way, I think the first time I've heard any libertarian or anarchist mention Bernays.
Oh, really?
People so need to learn. Yeah, these people don't want to learn how to sell stuff. They don't want to consult the experts.
Yeah, right.
I don't understand why, but yeah.
Yeah, I highly recommend reading some of Edward Bernays. If you're watching this and you haven't, it is so insightful, not only for how people have been propagandized, but how his techniques, they don't have to be bad. Like he himself said it must have been the 90s or 80s. He was already quite old, but he said like propaganda as a word was not inherently bad until Hitler. And then it got this really bad aura around it, but propaganda is not inherently bad. And I think it's really interesting to read his writings through the lens of your own beliefs, of like, how can I make this message more appealing to people? I think it's very highly recommended. His writing's really interesting. And then I think to answer your question, what books have I found helpful? There's so many books I found helpful. There's a woman named Tara Brach, and I actually haven't read her books. I've only listened to her podcast. It's BRACH. And it's an extra challenge because she is not an anarchist. She is for sure a statist, but she is such a good spiritual teacher that it's like, I like to listen to her and then listen or like feel my reactions when she says something statist, which is not that often, to be honest. Like if you listen to all her podcasts, I've heard her mention politics maybe 5 times out of 100 podcasts. But I highly recommend her because she's just so kind and gentle, and she just kind of helps you connect with yourself and tend to yourself and just like learn to be present, even if it's really hard. And even if you're feeling something that you really would rather not be feeling, she's like a kind grandmother who guides you toward it with love and awareness. So I really love her writing. And then I think I probably mentioned this book in Acapulco. I'd probably read it by then, but it's called the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook. And it's by Kristen Neff. I can't remember the other author's name, but it's like a really great guide. It kind of I'm not sure if it says this in the book or this is just an observation I made, but it really kind of turns away from the self-esteem movement of like, you get a trophy for participating and everybody's special and nobody, if everybody's special, nobody's special, right? Like it's really more about it's self-compassion as opposed to self-esteem. So it's just sort of building a little home within yourself to weather the storms, which are many when you're a human being, especially in these times. But those two books have been really, really, well, not books. Tara Brach has a lot of books, but Tara Brach and then this book have both been really instrumental in just helping me find a bit more peace. And then something I have to plug, I cannot not plug it, because this has had the biggest effect on my experience is about, oh my goodness, almost 10 months ago, I started a brain rewiring program. So I had some chronic health issues that no one could explain them. And blood work was normal, quote normal, but I was very clearly not well. Like seemed kind of autoimmune. And I started this brain rewiring program that uses neuroplasticity, which is the brain's inherent ability to change and build new neurons and new neural pathways. So it leverages neuroplasticity to help rewire a glitched out fight or flight response. And when I started doing this program, I went, oh my God, of course, this is for sure what's been going on. It's because the fight or flight response can get glitched out and it can stay chronic. And when you're in a constant state of stress and survival, you start to have chronic health problems because systems get deprioritized for survival mode. And then things start to go wrong, which is for sure what happened with me. And it's interesting with the Make America Healthy Again movement, which I think is riddled with contradictions. And it's good. And it's also, there's some problems, but something they haven't talked about chronic stress yet because they're talking about chronic disease. And this program, it's called the Dynamic Neural Retraining System. It helps so many problems. One of my issues was migraines. I did not have a migraine for 9 months. I was having a migraine almost weekly. Hadn't had one for 9 months until the day after the election because I overworked myself. And the next day I woke up and I was like, oh no, I remember what migraines are like. But it's funny because I had even made a tweet. I was like, oh, okay, everybody just be mindful of the stress you're taking in on election day and notice how it feels in your body and remember to step away. And then of course I got hooked into the addiction social media loop and I woke up with a gnarly migraine. But point being, it's been phenomenal for me and it's really helped. I came to it for food sensitivities and migraines and autoimmune stuff. And what I learned is that actually I had like some very severe anxiety that was just part of my daily experience of every single moment. My chest was gripped and my core was gripped. And there was just this like hypervigilance and I didn't even know. I wasn't even aware of it. And so this program, it's changed my life so much for the better. My health is improving. My mood is improving. I think when we look at all of the problems in the world, all of the conflict, the division, the polarization, the blame, the victimhood, I think a lot of that is probably correlated to too much stress and just a completely activated state of being.
Yeah, I have my disagreements with RFK too, but I think he's really in a place where he's learning and wanting to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think libertarians should really be nice to him because
right.
he may not come over, because if somebody's fighting, if somebody agrees with you on 60% of the issues, think, how do I get them to 70? How do I get them to 80? It's instead of just throwing them into the garbage, and it's just such a problem for us.
Yeah.
I just wondered because you'd seem like you'd done a lot of work and, you've certainly, it's hard to stay with this and not, be angry. And you seem to, liking the world. I mean, I'd be curious to know what Milei's done because he certainly overcome some things too. We need, I don't know. I think a lot of people for some people, maybe politics is a kind of therapy and it's, I definitely think a lot of people on the left nowadays are mentally ill. I don't even want to deal with them anymore.
I've kind of had to refocus my intention because when I started a long time ago, and I was a lot younger, I had this belief of like, I have to change the world. I have to convert the entire world away from statism toward freedom, toward anarchy. And I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years in, it started becoming apparent that I was not going to do this on my own. This was it was a little bit bigger than a one-person job. And so I've kind of just had to make peace with what the world is while not accepting. But it's like this weird balance of acceptance and non-acceptance of like, okay, I accept that this is reality and I would like to change this reality and I can't do it on my own. So I'm just going to do my little work in my little court of the internet. And if I reach one person, then honestly, it feels worth it to me.
Was there anybody else you'd like to mention that influenced you or not?
I think I mentioned Lysander Spooner. I got Rothbard. Larkin Rose was a big one for me, and I'm very grateful to know him in real life now.
Yeah. By the way, I can't help but notice Larkin is not on the Anarchapulco speakers list.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, maybe he's got something coming up, or maybe he's just not cut a deal yet. But I found that
yeah, because he's usually there. I wonder, maybe he just has a conflict, or they can't make it this year or something.
Yeah, but yeah, I've certainly, there's a lot of people in the who I think are focused on this, and certainly, it's funny. I can remember years ago, I these people I knew who swore by Nathaniel Brand. It's like, these people are crazy. Now it's like today though, I see them. Boy, these people who are into Nathaniel Brandon really have done some interesting things.
Yeah.
I don't know. You probably know Judd Weiss,
Oh, I know Judd from way back. Yeah.
But he was on Anarchist, and once he said it's not obsessive compulsive disorder, it's obsessive compulsive advantage.
Oh my God.
I love that attitude. Yeah,
For sure. Yeah, I can relate to that.
I didn't realize how long you knew Judd, and Ovens. Sometimes I think Ovens is the only voice of reason left in the LP, but
she's very articulate and very smart. That is a sharp brain she's got in there.
Yeah, she's smart. Yeah, she's definitely smart. I think they've done a lot of good work. You don't mind me asking, are you a vote? Do you vote at all, or are you like a lot of anarchists? Which is fine. Yeah.
I do not. But what I will say is that over the years, I'm so much less judgmental now. If somebody feels they have to vote, vote. This is like, your individual vote is not going to be the collapse of civilization. I disagree. I think it's immoral. I think it's choosing masters for other people, and all of the anarchist rhetoric I could throw in there. But how is it helping me to be mad at somebody else for, it's just, over the years, I've had to prioritize my peace over my sense of superiority over others.
Yeah, it's you spend all that moment. You're not going to regret spending that time fighting with people on the internet. It's
right, exactly.
We do too much. It's so easy to get pulled into it. Well, this has been a fantastic talk. I hope I don't know if we'll talk about anything again, but it was definitely something I wanted to talk about. I can't think of anything else that's happened right now. When was the last time you were in Acapulco, by the way?
That would have been 2019, actually, when I gave that speech. That was the last time I went. Yeah.
I went last in 2023. I was just curious about how they recovered from the hurricanes.
Yeah. How was it?
2023 was more outside. It was definitely it was more interesting, but I think I'd prefer. You don't have to have it at a fancy hotel, but I'd like to have something that has at least has real bathrooms.
Right.
It's kind of out there. It was it was good. And the other problem too is now, since it was at this venue, I rented an Airbnb that was within walking distance, but there's still no Uber or Lyft or anything like that. Acapulco, it's an interesting, I have to admit, I enjoy a couple times I went. You probably didn't make it, but I went to Float Fest a few times, which is the.
Oh, Float Fest. Did you say Float Fest?
Yeah.
I went, oh my God, it would have been 2021, I want to say. It was out on a farm.
I think it was just 2021 and 2022 were the only ones, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think I went to the first one then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like I should have met you there. Yeah. But I know Josh was there and a few other people were there. I was selling my books there. Yeah. It was.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I was with Tatiana the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Tatiana, she's making a lot of nice music too. Thanks for setting this up, Tatiana. It was really great. Yeah. Well, I think that's all we've got to say for now. Is there anything else you want to say? Where can we find you out there?
You can find me on all the regular platforms. The spelling is as it appears. It's a little strange spelling, so it's better just look at what it says on this video and type that in. And then my Substack, which I started in October, called Pleasure to Burn, which is a reference to Fahrenheit 451. It's the opening line from the dystopian novel. So pleasuretoburn.substack.com. I'm really loving it over there. And I'm on X, I'm on Telegram, I'm on BitChute, I'm on Odyssey, I'm on, you name it, I'm on it. And you can find me there. And I just wanted to say thank you to you too, because this is not a topic I get to talk about a lot. And it's really cool that I'm glad you liked my speech, and I'm glad that all these years later I get to add on to it and elaborate and discuss it in real life.
A lot's changed.
Real life.
It's a very important issue because we've got a divide, and it's how we survive. And I think it's something that just hits the core of us all. So please like this video, subscribe to the channel, check out my novel Escape from the Village. Go to buy me a coffee to support us, and check out my Substack, which I occasionally post on.
Cool.
Thank you, Carey Wedler. I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Buy my novel Escape from the Village from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.